Hi, I'm Heidi. Welcome to my kitchen. So tonight we're going to be recreating Julia Child's classic coco vin recipe. And I've got kind of all of the ingredients set up here. I've got some brandy, some wine, a couple of spices, some thyme and some bay leaves, some beef stock and tomato paste, several chicken legs and chicken thighs with the bone in, bacon, pearl onions, mushrooms, and some butter and flour, and some garlic. And out of that, we're going to create a recipe. So go ahead and follow along, and with that, we'll get started. So we're going to start out slicing up some mushrooms. And the way Julia cut mushrooms was very specific. She quartered them, and then she cut the stems on a bias, and I will show you how to do that here. So I'm going to set these aside, and I'm going to grab my knife. So what she did was she quartered the mushrooms like that. And then when she got to the stems, she cut them at an angle and a bias. And I'll show you again. There's the bias on the stems. And there's the bias again. The stems. And there is the quarter. Now on some of the mushrooms that were particularly big, she would cut them into thirds, just to get a little bit more out of it. So that is her style of cutting mushrooms. That's the French style. And you can follow along as I cook up the rest of these. So I'm going to take all this over here. So these onions, to make them easy to peel, we're going to follow Julia's recommendation. What we're going to do is we're going to drop them in the hot water for about 10 seconds, and then we're going to pull them out. Which should make them very easy to peel. Peels should slip right off. Yep. This was Julia's recommendation for peeling the pearl onions, which works perfectly. She said 10 seconds in the water will take the peels right off. They're really thin peels. Now take the ends off these onions. And then I'll show you Julia's other trick. And then the last thing we're gonna do, that's Julia's other trick here, is we're just gonna pierce the end of these little guys. All these back over. So now our onions are ready. And a little bit of olive oil. Now, Julia Child fried her bacon in a little bit of olive oil. So we are going to saute up some bacon, and bacon you actually can go into a cold pan because the fat will render itself out as the bacon heats up. Now, Julia Child recommended blanching the bacon first so that you take the smoky bacon flavor out of it so your meat doesn't wind up tasting like bacon. Personally, I kind of like the bacon flavor, and most modern chefs don't blanch their bacon, so I chose not to do that. But you can do that if you want to take the bacon flavor out of it. Blanch for about 30 seconds in hot water and then take it out. Now, when you brown your meat, you want your meat to be very dry. You don't want it to have a lot of moisture in it. Otherwise, it's not going to brown properly. It's just going to steam. And so you want to take some paper towels and dry off your meat. So just take some paper towels and really press them into your meat and get all the moisture out of it. And taking a look over here, our bacon is finished cooking, so we're going to go ahead and pull that off the stove and set that aside. Next, I'm going to brown my meat, starting skin side down in the bacon drippings. And I don't want to overcrowd the pan here, because if I overcrowd the pan, my meat is actually just going to steam instead of brown, and I don't want that. Now, these thighs I pulled off of 2 whole chickens. It saves you a lot of money to fabricate a whole chicken rather than buying individual parts. So if you're gonna do a big recipe like this, I definitely recommend getting and cutting up a whole chicken. I'll do another video on how to fabricate a chicken. It's very easy. So I check my meat and see that it's looking really good and it's ready to flip. So I check these guys and see that they are ready to pull, and so I'm going to take them and I'm going to transfer them right over to my stock pot. We're going to brown these guys. And while those legs are browning, I'm going to season these guys with some salt and pepper. Yeah. We're going to drain the excess fat off and then return the pan to the stove. And then we're going to deglaze the pan with about a 1/4 cup of brandy. Now, if you're feeling really brave here, you can turn the heat up really high and light the alcohol on fire. This is called a flambe. I didn't want to do that because there's too much flammable stuff in my kitchen. But it's really fun, and it is one way to burn the alcohol flavor off very quickly. Notice how I'm scraping the bottom of the pan very slowly. That is specifically because I don't want to ignite the alcohol. Bear in mind, there are alcohol fumes coming off of this, and they could ignite at any point. So if you don't want to ignite your alcohol, be very careful how much you agitate it. And once I've scraped up all those yummy bits of flavor, I'm going to go ahead and add my brandy to my stock pot. And now we are going to add in a couple of bay leaves, about 1/2 teaspoon of thyme, a tablespoon of tomato paste,
a few garlic cloves, and these garlic cloves, you can just split them in half and leave the peel on, because believe it or not, the peels do have flavor in them. So I just split them right down the center and throw the whole thing in. Now we're going to use about 2 cups of red wine. And for this, I'm using a really nice Pinot Noir. And about 2 cups of beef stock. Now you can use beef or chicken stock. I really like beef stock because I feel like it pairs really nicely with the dark meat and red wine, but either is appropriate. And we're gonna give it a stir to get everything mixed in there and kind of make sure those chicken legs are at least halfway covered. I'm gonna taste it to see how it's tasting and see if it needs seasoning, which it does, so I'm gonna go ahead and season it up. But I want to be careful that I don't over season here, because I have to keep in mind that it is going to reduce, so it's going to get saltier the longer it cooks. So we're gonna go ahead and bring that up to a boil and then put a lid on it and bring it down to low. And then we're gonna let it simmer on the stove for the next 30 to 35 minutes. And then we'll come back and check it. Now you can do this in the oven as well at 350 for about 35 minutes. You can do it either way. Personally, I like doing it on the stovetop, but you can do it in the oven too. Either is totally fine. Now we're gonna roast our onions in a dry pan. We're gonna brown them until they're nice and crispy. And then we are going to glaze them, and I'll show you how to do that. So once the onions are nice and brown, then we're gonna go ahead and add about a cup of water to the pan. And we're also gonna add about a tablespoon of butter. And last but not least, we are going to season with salt. Give that a stir to mix everything in, and then pop a lid on it and move it to a back burner and let it cook for 30 minutes. Now we're gonna add some olive oil to our pan. The same pan that we cooked the bacon and browned the meat in, because it's still gonna have a lot of flavor in it. And we're gonna cook our mushrooms in that pan. So we're gonna spread our mushrooms out in a nice even layer, and then we're gonna season with salt and pepper. And then we're gonna saute up our mushrooms until they're nice and cooked down and brown. And now is a great time for me to remind you that if you're enjoying what you're seeing, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and you will get notified about new recipes coming out every week. The mushrooms are done now, so I'm gonna pull them off the stove and save them for later. About 20 minutes later, my onions are now done, and I can pull those off the stove and set those aside. And that means that my chicken is also just about done, so I can pop over here and check that. So I pull my chicken out and set that aside, and then I'm gonna head over to the sink and I'm gonna strain my broth.
Into a metal bowl. I'm gonna pour this back in here. This is called a Burmese. It is a cold roux. It's a mixture between butter and flour, and you throw it into the liquid cold. So what we're doing is we're mixing up butter and flour in our hands. So you mix it just in your hands, just like this. And then you take it with the flour mixed in, and you just toss it right into the hot liquid. I'm just going to mix it right in as it's boiling, and this should thicken up our stock.
I noticed that I was getting a lot of little tiny bits of condensed flour in there, and so that's where I took a wire whisk and decided to whisk it out, and that did the trick. It thickened it up perfectly, and it took all the flour out of it and incorporated it into the dish perfectly.
And that did it. Mixed it all together. That should be nice and thick.
And then at the end, we threw everything in together. I added in the onions, and I added in the mushrooms, and the bacon, and the chicken, and there we had it. That was our coq au vin. Oh, and then to top it off at the end, I garnished with just a little bit of parsley.
I'm going to try this coq au vin. I'm going to try some of the chicken first. So I'm going to take some of it off the bone here. And this looks amazing. This is cooked perfectly. Kind of falls off the bone, which is just perfect. So it braised beautifully. Take too big of a bite because it's pretty hot. That's delicious. That is so good. That is absolutely delicious. It tastes very French. Try a little bit of the onions. It's very hot. Onions are fantastic. Onions are absolutely delicious. Mushrooms. Mushrooms are seasoned perfectly. This is a fantastic dish. This is so delicious. This is really good.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment below and let me know what you thought. Your engagement really helps me out a lot. Thanks, guys. See you next time.